Okay, this is the third session of Duet December, and today me and Steven are playing I Haven't Seen You Since ... And this is a pretty, like improv heavy game. We're gonna make everything up as we go. It's basically two characters who are reuniting after having seen each other in a long time. We'll see where it goes. I expect, there's a high what's the right word? There's like opportunities to be ridiculous, I guess. All right, so yeah, I guess we can just get started. You can go first if you'd like.
All right. Well, Emily Cartwright. I'm surprised to see a respectable young woman like you in a place like this.
Oh, Mr. Von D, you know I have a weakness for the sweets.
Yes, I remember. I haven't seen you since that time we retrieved your grandmother's jewels from your ne'er-do-well cousin.
Well, you will be glad to hear that that ne'er-do-well cousin George has finally been married off and moved up to the countryside.
Indeed, he could hardly remain in the city after the incident with the pastry cart.
Yes, I think that yes. And speaking of pastries, what brings you to this back alley tea house?
That is an interesting question. Have you heard of the Mask of Ramajul?
Yes. I heard that the reputable archaeologist Mr. Jones recently retrieved the mask from the one of those places known as the Orient. I heard that it has mystical qualities.
Yes, but if you heard that Professor Jones had retrieved the mask, then you have heard only half the story, for he lost it almost immediately.
Oh, and are you looking for this mask?
Indeed, I have heard that the antiques dealer Hans von Trapp has discreetly been arranging an auction.
Well, I do not know if you know this, but me and Mr. Von Trapp know each other in the biblical sense, and so I may be able to help you acquire this mask.
I would be grateful if you could merely confirm that he does in fact have the mask, because I must convince him not to allow this to be auctioned off. The consequences could be indescribable.
Oh, Mr. Von D, always concerned with consequences of a global proportion. Where's your sense of fun?
My dear lady, fun is one thing. The resurrection of the Emperor Ramajul is quite another.
Well, the auction, I'm sure the auction will not occur I'm sure the auction will not occur within the hour. So please sit down and enjoy some decadent desserts with me.
I would be delighted, Miss Cartwright. I presume it is still Miss.
Oh yes, I, although my family keeps asking me, "Oh, Emily, are there any fine young gentlemen calling on you?" Alas, there are none, and I wish none. So I am still here enjoying my decadent desserts, manless.
Well, clearly you need a respectable escort, and who could be more respectable than I?
Yes, yes.
So, so let us have a slice of this delightful Linzer torta
Mm.
and a cup of Turkish coffee,
Oh yes.
and let us discuss. Yeah, let us discuss what has passed since we last saw each other, because I mean, at the time, as I remember, you were not involved with Mr. Von Trapp, but with the delightful actress. What was her name?
Oh, Amelia. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. There is no ill will between me and Amelia. She gained the delightful opportunity to travel the world, and we decided, since I could not go with her, it would be better for us to go about our adventures. Uh, as you know, hopefully we'll encounter each other again, but you know, I cannot exactly be attached to her while she is in India and I am here.
In, you say she has traveled to India?
Oh
The same country from which the Mask of Ramajul was recently discovered?
well, simply one place she has gone. She spent a lot of time in New York and London and in Berlin, and then of course in Bombay and Beijing.
An adventurous lady indeed. No wonder you took up with her.
Yes. Perhaps a little too adventurous for me, you know. I do enjoy slowing down, drinking tea in the garden, playing cards.
Ah, yes.
And so,
Slowing down. I'm quite sure that is an accurate description of your.
yeah, yeah. And so so I assume this Mask of Ramajul brings you back here, but what else has befallen you besides this quest?
Oh well. Besides the loss of my arm, as you can see, there has been very little of note.
Oh well, I can assure you that your silhouette is still as handsome as ever.
Indeed, you're most gracious, and as you can see, my mechanical hand is quite adept at gripping even this most delicate coffee cup.
Oh well, you know, these technologies always advancing.
Yes. But come, I can come. I cannot believe that your life has not been most remarkably adventurous. Is it true that the recovery of the lost hippopotamus in Covent Garden was due to your exertions?
Well, I must take credit for that, of course. You know, me and my dear friend Abigail were picnicking in the garden when the hippopotamus waddled out of the pond. And of course, you know, hippopotamuses are quite exotic, and many people ran in fear. But you know,
as well they might.
I had seen a hippopotamus in the Royal Zoo when I was in London, so I knew that while they are quite strong, they are also quite docile at times, and if you tempt them with the right treats. So, as this particular gentleman hippopotamus waddled about the garden, I simply took some fruits and sweetmeats from our basket and tossed them into his mouth, and yet he followed me back and got back into the pond.
My dear Emily, you are surely the only woman in all of Christendom who would describe a hippopotamus as docile. I must commend your courage, and I am sure that your ability to escape serious injury was as much due to the swiftness of your as your own swiftness as to the good temper of the beast in question.
Well, yes, and you know, I tend to haunt these fanciful gardens. Do you remember our afternoons in the Peacock Garden, watching those gentleman birds strut around and preening their feathers?
Yes, indeed. I do remember the biceps of the young peacock wrangler, which I am quite convinced was as much an attraction for you as the exotic plumage.
Well, you know, men do not have the colorful plumage that the male peacocks do, so they must define their bodies in other ways in the muscles. And muscles of the arms could be compared to the colorful plumage of peacocks.
Yes, that is true. Although I have seen some dandies who were quite as colorful as any peacock.
True, and just as effective at attracting mates. Have you seen our dear friend Miss Pettigrew lately? Ever since you went away, I have not seen her. Not perhaps just due to both parties not crossing paths, but do miss our dear friend.
Oh no, her disappearance is quite intentional.
Oh.
As you may recall the incident of the ruby idol of the Philippines, and I'm afraid that Miss Pettigrew, in retrieving the idol with me, she drew the enmity of some very dangerous gentlemen, and indeed, and she has since chosen to adopt a new identity entirely.
Oh, well, it seems that taking up with you is quite dangerous. How you seem to taken on a much more adventurous streak since you left to study archaeology.
Indeed, I must admit that when I was at Oxford, I thought archaeology would be a most sedate pursuit, but ever since Dr. Jones's guest lecture, I have found myself drawn into the most curious and exciting academic pursuits.
Well, adventure does inject a spice into life.
Yes, but which makes the moments when we can sit quietly at a table such as this, enjoying linzer torta and Turkish coffee, all the more delightful.
Yes. Yeah. I admit that since Amelia left for her tour, and then you, my other adventurous friend, left, and as you may know that my mother has taken ill with consumption, and I have been taking care of her. I admit my life has been much more sedate than it used to be.
I am most grieved to hear that your mother is unwell. As you know, she and I were of course lovers before her marriage to Lord Cartwright, and I have always felt most kindly towards her.
Yes, well, she remembers you very fondly, and she is glad that our friendship can give me a little taste of adventure.
Yeah. Well, yes, that is no doubt your mother's blood telling. For Lord Cartwright is the most, you will forgive me for saying this, the most stiff, boring, dull man it has ever been my misfortune to encounter.
Well, I am sure that Mother agrees with you. I mean, he does have some good qualities. His bank
I am sure.
account. Uh, he can tell he does have a good appreciation for puns. Uh, but yes, most of the time it's quite boring. But we manage to get along. He's
Yeah.
unfortunate. Well, he doesn't quite know how to comfort Mother in her time of illness, so he has often left me to do that while he goes away on business.
Yes, he is. He does, I admit, have quite a talent for business, but only of the most respectable kind, which
Yeah.
is
Oh,
which is hardly worth mentioning.
oh, it makes me giggle to think of him in uh, in uh, in the kind of situations that I'm sure you get up to, digging and chasing bad guys, um, retrieving artifacts. It's so counter to his nature.
Yes, although you will remember that in the incident of the the African pirates, his ability with a pistol was most welcome, and indeed, I think it was that incident which captured your mother's heart.
Yes, well, his brief time in the Royal Navy served him well. But
Yes, yes, he was a striking figure in uniform. I will grant that.
yes. Well, as much as he wishes that cousin George could strike a good silhouette in uniform, alas, we had to marry him off and send him to the countryside.
Cousin George. If he could have enlisted as a common sailor, I think the Navy might have been the making of him. But sadly, his station in life led him to refuse any post other than that of an officer, for which he was, of course, completely unsuited.
Well, yes. Oh, George. Well, I hope he does not spend all of the money in his trust. Or I'm not sure what profession he might pick up. Not out of, I'm sure he could acquire the skills. It is more the life attitude.
Oh, I I am quite convinced that your father would have arranged the terms of the trust to sequester the money quite effectively against any attempt to borrow or squander it.
Oh,
I,
yes.
yes, that is business is indeed the one thing at which he can be trusted. Absolutely. But no, I speak a lie. He can be trusted equally well to maintain the family honor.
Oh, yes, this reminds me of a very funny incident that happened when I was younger. There was uh, there was a son of one of the other families in our circle who we were at a ball, and I was talking to him, trying to be nice, and he of course um, he attempted to put his hand up my skirt, to which my father drew his pistol from his belt and threatened to shoot him right there if he didn't stop.
Quite right. Anyone who is fool enough to do such a thing in front of your father deserves to have his brains blown out.
Well, it was not quite in sight of my father, but my father had the sixth sense to know what was happening. So tell me about another one of your adventures.
Well, of course, before I was in India, I was I most recently summited uh, one of the mountains in Nepal, upon which it is rumored that the creature known as the Yeti makes its home.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, and I am afraid I am afraid that I believe the Yeti to be a mere myth. For upon this mountain, I found no trace of any such exotic animal, but rather merely bandits who who dressed in the skins of yaks terrorize innocent travelers. And I believe that it is sightings of these low scoundrels who have given rise to the legends.
Well, there is a story printed in the magazines about Scooby Doo, which the lesson often tells us that many of these ghastly monsters we fear often are just men in costume trying to dupe us.
I am, I am not familiar with this newspaper fiction. Fiction, I suppose it is, but
Yes.
it offers a most wholesome lesson, which must be of inestimable value to the youths of this great nation.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, Mr. Von D, it seems that that it is almost to the next hour, and I fear I should depart to go check on the status of your mask with Mr. Von Trapp.
oh, my dear Emily, it is not necessary, for while I have been keeping you distracted, my colleagues have burgled your upstairs flat, and by now the mask is certainly in their possession. But it was a most delightful afternoon, and I am grateful for our conversation.
Oh man. I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got, yeah, I thought, yeah, yes. I mean, I thought you were bringing it to a close, so I was okay. How could I twist? How could I twist?
Yes. So now for the epilogue. Think about the internal response to the conversation. What's unresolved? How have their feelings changed? Does your character wish to stay reconnected? In terms for Emily, I think through the conversation, I guess I really think that it was kind of like, oh, my life used to be so adventurous, like with you and my other friends. And now as you're telling me about like all your adventures, I realize that I haven't really been doing very adventurous things. So, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Well, that ending certainly kind of twisted the relationship between the characters.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think in general, but I feel like perhaps maybe she would take it more with like a humorous take and say like, oh, you got me. But it's more like, oh, like you got me, but let's still be friends.
Yes, I feel like there's an amiable adversary vibe that got set up.
Yeah.
It's like we will joust again.
Yes. What do you think about for your character?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I quite like Emily, even though she was on the wrong side of the conflict this time, and I feel like I feel like we will meet again, and I will never dislike her or feel like she's an enemy, even if we're on opposite sides. It's like I will always be delighted to see her, and I will be more delighted if we can meet not as adversaries but as friends.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was really fun. I mean, it was fun to kind of be able to like make up a lot of like weird and ridiculous stuff and do all these adventures.
Right.
And
yeah. I mean, it did feel like we were sort of meandering a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the nature of this game a little bit, though. Like, there's not really a structure to go on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's possible that if we had been just that we might have played it so that we developed some of the backstory a little more instead of just illusions. But I mean, that's sort of hard to do in the moment.
Yeah, I guess kind of like just the way that the game works out is that you just rely on those allusions to what happened.
Right.
Yeah. Which is an interesting way of like telling a story.
Yeah.
Which it can be really great, but it could also be like too vague.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. I did too. I mean, I think it probably could not have gone on much longer.
Yeah,
I think it would have worn out its welcome after that. But
yeah, just because we rely so much on like the improv.
Right. Right. It's I mean, the improv, it was sort of developing linear, in that it was just not we weren't really getting into more depth. We were just stretching things out. It felt like.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop the.
Okay.